All right, so we're back here once again and continuing our ninth annual Couch Coach Live NFL preview, where we've been doing all 32 teams in the National Football League. And we got representing the AFC champion, Cincinnati Bengals, our
Yes,
guy,
sir.
Taylor Cornell. What's going on, Taylor?
It's going. It's going. How are you doing? I love the hat, by the way.
Yes, indeed. Yes, a very yeah, and we talked during the Super Bowl.
Yep.
Obviously, you previewed the Bengals for us on our Super Week of
Mhm.
last year of Couch Coach Live. And yeah, so you went from sending playoff text to hey, we're in the Super Bowl. So
Yeah.
um,
Yeah.
a very bad year. Obviously, fell a little bit short, but hey, considering the fact, hey, we would have been talking about previewing the Bengals of 2021, would ever thought that they'd be in the
Yeah.
Super Bowl representing the AFC.
Absolutely.
So we're here. So
We're here.
definitely. So obviously, the confetti dropped in LA as the Rams won the Super Bowl, and you guys did do a lot of impressive stuff in the offseason. So Taylor, your thoughts on the offseason, and then what do you deem as the team's biggest acquisition?
Yeah, I mean the off season, if you look at free agency, was the focus was obviously around the offensive line, which it had to be after what we saw last season, including in the Super Bowl. I think Burrow was sacked 7 times, I believe, in the Super Bowl, 9 times in the divisional round against the Titans. I mean, just constant duress. So it was an obvious glaring weakness, and kudos to the front office because they went out and addressed that. So they signed Ted Karras, the former Dolphin, former Patriot, to play center. He's a good veteran presence there, pretty solid guy as an anchor of your line. Went and got Alex Kappa, who had been protecting Tom Brady the last few years, plug him in at right guard. And then probably the crown jewel of our offseason was signing Lael Collins, the former Cowboys right tackle. And pretty excited about him. He hasn't been able to practice much yet. He's got some back spasms that they're being extra careful about now, but he's a guy that's really exciting to have. And so 3 of your 5 offensive line spots from the previous year are replaced with guys that are clear upgrades. So all 3 of those, when you look at free agency, were the big guys. And then because we did that in free agency, it allowed the Bengals to really attack defense in the draft. And so those acquisitions, there was a lot of focus on speed, versatility, got a couple safeties, couple cornerbacks. So pretty exciting group there as well.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah.
It's like I can hear you.
So hey, it happens, But going into this season, obviously, we always look at, especially, the team that did lose Super Bowl, the Super Bowl hangover and all types of stuff kind of hovers over. So besides that, what do you look at as that team's biggest storyline heading into the season?
Yeah, I think for Bengals fans, we were excited about Joe Burrow having a first off season here of no distractions. If you look at 2020's rookie year was the COVID off season, which was a little weird for rookies coming in. Then, of course, rehabbing an injury last off season. It was like, finally, he gets an off season where he can just hone his craft, perfect his craft, get better. And wouldn't you know, he has appendicitis, has surgery, and has now been out for last couple of weeks. He's missed all of camp. So it doesn't, reports are a little iffy on when he will be back exactly, definitely before week 1, but how many reps is he going to get? So unfortunately, that storyline that we were looking forward to be like, how does Burrow improve in this offseason has been disrupted a little bit. But I think for myself, the biggest storyline is continuing the momentum from last year. And this was by no means a perfect team. I mean, people that watched the Bengals casually probably were like, how in the world did this team end up in the Super Bowl? Where did they come from? And I would be lying if I said I wasn't surprised we made it there too, right? Like midway through the season, I'm like, all right, we can make the playoffs here. To get to the Super Bowl was a whole other beast. But I think continuing some of that momentum that we saw last year with our offense, explosive offense with Jamar Chase and T. Higgins and Joe Mixon. We now have, as I mentioned, the improved offensive line. It's going to be kind of eliminating some of those, like really the 2 things that really stalled this offense last year were sacks, obviously, killed us on drives, and struggling in early parts of games, struggling to score in the first quarter, struggling to get things going early on, you kind of dig yourself a hole. So I think those are 2 areas where the Bengals improve, get a little bit more consistent, and this the storyline nationally becomes the Bengals offense that's hopefully scoring 30 plus a game if those things can happen.
I had to go muted again. So, so your thoughts and your outlook on the team offense. What do you, your thoughts and also the outlook of this team offensively?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I think this team honestly should score 30 points per game, which sounds absolutely insane to just expect a team to do that, right? That's a big deal. But there's a lot of things that you look at, like I mentioned, the sacks that really killed drives last year that we are hoping that this year, with an improved offensive line, we'll see less of that. The team also ranked next to last, I believe, or no, they were 29th in the NFL in pace of play last year. So they played very slow last year. We think that's going to improve a little bit. And so when you look at some of these things that you are expecting to see areas of improvement in, I think it's not unreal or unrealistic to assume that you could see a very explosive offense that really last year we saw the big plays, but they were not consistent. If we were lacking big plays in games, they struggled to score. And I think this is going to be a more consistent offense, just as explosive. And I mentioned Lyle Collins as kind of the crown jewel of our free agency. He was the top graded right tackle for run blocking last year. So a lot has been made about let's protect Joe Burrow. Let's keep him on his feet. Let's give him time. But Joe Mixon in the backfield, who rushed for over 1,000 yards last year, one of the best running backs in the NFL, my unbiased opinion, he stands to benefit as well from an improved offensive line. So I look at this and I'm saying the offensive line allowed a lot of sacks in the red zone, most in the league, actually. Burrow, for as great as he was, tied for the most interceptions in the league in the red zone last year. So the red zone was an area where they didn't do very well. And if they improve in any of those areas there that I mentioned, whether it's less sacks, less turnovers in the red zone, I think there's no reason this team can't put up 30 plus points per game in 2022.
Yeah, absolutely. So transitioning from the offense, your thoughts on the other side of the ball, your thoughts on this Bengals team defensively.
Yeah, I'm excited about the defense. The defense has slept on a little bit, and they did start off pretty hot last year. Early in the season, they were really carrying the Bengals, and the Joe Burrow was clearly still recovering, getting his feet underneath of him after rehabbing the gruesome knee injury. Like I said, our offense was kind of sluggish at times, and the defense really carried us early on. Now, they struggled a bit down the stretch, a little bit. And so some of those numbers, like for a while, they were top 5, top 10 in points allowed per game. And I believe total yardage. And that kind of ended up by the end of the season being closer to about league average. But honestly, the defense is not something that I'm at all worried about. And a lot of camp reports right now are reminiscent of last offseason as well. Last training camp, we heard the defense was dominating, and it was like, what's going on with this offense? Jamar Chase was dropping balls. Joe Burrow was struggling. All those things ended up working themselves out. But then you kind of sit back and say, maybe we weren't giving that defense enough credit and how they were performing in training camp. And we saw it carry over into the season. This is a defense that returns pretty much all of their starters. Larry Ogunjobi along the defensive line is the only guy that is not returning. But Trey Hendrickson, who's a menace off the edge, he's returning again. He's up there. If you look at sacks over the last couple of years, he's up there with Myles Garrett, who, of course, is one of the best in the league to do it from the edge. So we got Trey Hendrickson back. We have a couple of young guys that people outside of Cincinnati may not have heard of. Joseph Osai, a third-round pick from last year, flashed in the preseason before he injured his knee and was out for the season. He's returning this year. There's high expectations for him to kind of work in tandem with Hendrickson. And then I mentioned again the draft and the emphasis that was put on getting speed and getting versatility. We drafted, I believe, 4 defensive backs that ran sub 4.4 40s in Dax Hill, who is our first-round pick, Cam Taylor-Britt, who is going to be challenging Eli Apple opposite of Chido Awuzie for starting cornerback position. Tyson Anderson's a safety we took later on as well. So there's a lot of speed on this defense. And from a Bengals perspective, I think the only place you could say you're a little curious as to how it's going to play out is the Jesse Bates situation, which has now made national headlines as he's holding out. He doesn't want to play under the franchise tag. I fully expect him to play, and I expect him to play well. He was up and down a little bit last year. Thankfully, in the playoffs, he was very, very good. but I expect him to be more consistent this year because he's going to be playing for his next huge contract, which is very likely going to be not in Cincinnati. So he has all the incentive in the world to play well this season. So that's the one area you might look at the defense and say, he's missing a ton of reps here in camp. He's probably not going to play at all in the preseason. He might show up a few days before week 1. But, the flip side of that is Dax Hill, who we drafted in round 1, is getting a ton of first team reps out there at safety in Jesse Bates' absence in training camp. Through preseason, we'll see it as well. So we're a confident group, I think, on both sides of the ball. I think the defense gets less talked about than the offense because we don't have a lot of splashy guys, but it's a very solid unit. And I think we'll see them perform admirably this year like they did as well last year.
All right. And so, and obviously when the schedule came out in May, there's got to be some games that are circled on the calendar. I know I say usually just like one, but I know there's got to be at least, give me about 2 or 3 potentially that you got games that are circled on the calendar for the Bengals.
It's funny because as I did a schedule release episode on my podcast, there were 2 games that I wasn't excited about. All of the rest of them I was. We play the Falcons in week 7 and the Panthers in week 9, and those are kind of like, don't really care too much about those. Every other game on the schedule, though, so all 15 other ones, I could make a case for it to be an exciting game. So you're right. It's hard to narrow it down to one. I'll put an honorable mention first, and that is week 4 against Miami. It's a Thursday night game, and that's an honorable mention because it's a big game for Cincinnati. It's a Ring of Honor ceremony night, so we'll be inducting a couple of guys into our Ring of Honor. It's also the night that they have announced we'll get to wear our new white helmets for the first time, which is exciting. I expect it to be a very fresh get up that they have there. And they've already said, hey, it's going to be a whiteout for the stadium. So all the fans wear white. So it's a very exciting atmosphere. The Dolphins themselves have some exciting guys, Tua, Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle and whatnot. But if you look at the schedule and say, okay, what are the games that you're circling as maybe the most interesting? I really think the Kansas City game, we obviously beat them twice last year. We get them again later in the season, week 13, December 4th. We play Kansas City in Cincinnati. And I think that's an interesting one because last year, a lot has been made about both of those games where Kansas City got out to a huge lead. In both games, we came back, we won. And in both scenarios, there's a lot of, well, it was a really kind of fluky comeback because, in the first game, we held the ball for the last 6 minutes of the game and then kicked a walk-off field goal. In the AFC Championship, Patrick Mahomes kind of crumbled in the second half and overtime and looked extremely flustered. And it's like, well, he'll never play that bad again. You kind of got lucky. That's one to me where it's like, I want to, I would want to show the rest of the NFL that those games were not fluky, that we can beat Kansas City 3 times in a row, which would say a lot. But then I think the one that, nationally outside of Cincinnati, if you're not a Bengals fan, you will be tuned into is week 17. So you're assuming there are probably some playoff implications there. Monday Night Football, January 2nd. So you're coming off the holiday there. You've probably eaten too much around Christmas and New Year's and whatever. And you've got Monday Night Football against the Buffalo Bills. And I think that's going to be a game that, depending on how the season goes, will be potentially dubbed as like an AFC Championship preview sort of thing. So that's a really exciting game. Hopefully, both teams are healthy at the time and fighting for playoff position and stuff like that. But man, that's going to be a real battle.
Yeah. And yeah, that's going to be, whew. And that could be potentially, just down the road, that could be who has home field advantage in the AFC potentially.
Exactly. Yeah.
So
could be a ton of implications on that one.
Right. So ask everyone, and now you're on the hot seat. So I always ask the $60 million question. So in 2022, the reigning AFC champion Cincinnati Bengals will finish
11-6. 11-6. I could actually convince myself 12-5, but I think you have to take into effect this was a very healthy team last year. If there's any nicks and bruises along the way and key players miss some time, maybe we lose some games we should win. But I think 11-6 feels very safe to me. I feel pretty confident in it looking through the schedule that there are 11 games in there that we can win. So that should set us up for an AFC North title. at the very worst, we're in the mix for it. If the Ravens are really good as well this year, maybe we get a wild card. But with 11 wins, you wouldn't complain no matter how you're getting into the playoffs.
Yeah, absolutely. So we'll put a bow on this Cincinnati Bengals preview. Once again, Def, appreciate you, Taylor, for coming on. Tell them where they can find you on social media and also in upcoming projects and what else is going on with you.
Yes, sir. I'm out on Twitter at _Taylor Cornell. My tweets are probably 99% Bengals, 1% fantasy football. I'm in a lot of fantasy football leagues, so every once in a while you'll see me tweet about some other players. But I have a Bengals podcast as well called the Who Dey Den. Have a lot of fun with that as well. We've had some great guests. So a lot of I had the beat writer from ESPN who covers the Bengals on my last episode. A couple episodes ago was the beat writer from The Athletic. So just a lot of great guests coming on, giving their insight, talking Cincinnati. If you're not a fan of Cincinnati, but you're a fan of one of the teams that plays Cincinnati this year, I always do a preview episode. Generally, I try to get somebody from that other team, like one of their beat writers or something, to come on and preview that game. So you can check it out whether you're a Bengals fan or not, but I have a lot of fun with that. It's called the Who Dey Den.
Yeah. Once again, definitely appreciate you, Taylor, for coming on. And,
For sure.
you know, maybe we'll talk with you in February again.
Hey, let's do another Super Bowl preview. What do you say?
Let's make this an annual thing potentially. So, you know.
I appreciate it. Yes, thanks for having me on.
Yes, indeed. Appreciate it. And once again, this concludes the Cincinnati Bengals preview. And we'll catch you guys on the next team. This has been the Cincinnati Bengals preview, and we're out.